And so the support for free trade among our political elite has declined. Nevertheless, there's a lot of support for free trade in the business community. China is especially interesting because it has lots of good engineers. And it's got companies that, entrepreneurs who know how to organize engineers. So 10 years from now, you ask me about chips, all the chips in my thing are to be made in China. They'll probably be pretty good too.
So what's your predictions of the Fed policy in 2024? Will they begin to cut rates?
So they would say they don't know, and I would say I don't know. Because here's the reason. And one thing that people who participate in capital markets know is it's very hard to predict either interest rates or stock prices. And there's mathematical and statistical reasons why. The basic reason is if I think stock prices are going to go up and everybody else thinks that, they would already make them rise right away. So the stock prices are a consequence of a whole bunch of people like, a lot smarter than I am trying to predict it, and they trade. It's very hard to predict future stock prices, whether they'll go up or down. That's kind of a fact. And same thing with interest rates. But they're kind of asked to indicate what they think the interest rate that they supposedly set, and they'll actually say, we don't know. But if you turn down an artificially intelligent machine learner, they'd tell you the same thing. It's just very hard to predict. Several economists who live in China have a brand new paper about how to predict inflation. And they use advanced machine learning. It's interesting how they do it. They're trying to improve estimates of inflation, and I'll give you a hint, they use stock prices. They use stock prices. They don't use the conventional. Anyway, but it's very hard. They're world class. It's very hard anyway, predicting inflation is a very hard thing. And because of that, predicting interest rates is really hard. So.
Mm-hmm. Like you said, the Fed always say they don't know about the future. Do you believe their judgment? Do they really don't know the future?
Or do I believe them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, completely.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of the people who work at the Fed and who are there, and I pretty much know what they know. And in particular, they use models, they use statistics. They deal with uncertainty all the time, and they know it. They're in a funny situation with the press, because they've gotten themselves in a situation where they talk to the press a lot, and the press doesn't want technically sophisticated things. They're doing very sophisticated things. They're talking about game theory. They're talking about very abstract things in dynamics that you almost have to be they use some of the same math that physicists use. And the strange thing is that it's actually a beautiful thing. The person in the street does not expect himself to understand physics. They don't go to a physicist, and physicists don't have news conferences where they explain relativity, okay? It's a great thing about economics. Everybody deals with economics every day of their life. They decide what to buy, and they have their own theories. And they do understand a lot about their own selves. So they think they know as much as, the Fed chairman or the head of the Central Bank of China. So they're kind of they're more interested, but it kind of makes communication more difficult, more challenging. Because I know the people who do it spend a lot of time talking about how to communicate. And a lot of it's about how to simplify. My guess is every central bank does that. But anyway, it's interesting.
So would you like to give me a number? How many times will the Fed cut rates next year?
I have no idea.
No idea?
I have no idea.
Just a guess?
No idea. They don't either.
Mm-hmm.
They don't either. And if you're a person that can read, some people can read faces, like my wife can read faces. If you watch them if you ask a Fed member that, and you watch their face, you'll see unless they're a good poker player, you'll see, they'll say, I wish you hadn't asked me that, because I don't know.
Looking ahead, how do you think about the global economy in 2024?
For better or worse, I think it'll look a lot like 2023. That's a pretty good answer most of the time. I'm being honest, and that's what the evidence says. And if you kind of go back, if like, let's say in December 2019, you asked me that, I would have said that. I would have been really wrong. But why? Because of a huge, unexpected shock that we never thought of. Maybe we thought about something, so unless there's something like that, either a really good shock or a bad shock, that's kind of it. Now, are there shocks to worry about? Sure. You could think about lots of shocks to worry about it.
So what will drive the growth next year? What will be the key engines next year?
Same thing they've always been. Scientific discoveries, practical implementation, people both imitating and innovating. A lot of growth comes from imitation. Like you can see that in individual scientific work. Somebody takes a new idea, it's 95% combining old ideas in one really nice new one. So that going on, opportunities for trade within a country. Trade within, the principles that why people like international trade are the same reasons they like trade within a country. There's some regions that produce some things better than others.
The US will have an election next year. How will the election affect international trade?
I'm not hopeful about that. And the reason is, very sadly, the two political parties, Trump and Biden, agree on many things. And lots of things they agree on are bad economics. They agree on trade subsidies and tariffs. The campaign will say, I'll raise tariffs bigger than you will. No, you won't. I'll raise them bigger than you. That's not good. And so the support for free trade among our political elite has declined. And that's not good for my country. And it's not good for, nevertheless, there's a lot of support for free trade in the business community. Businessmen and little citizens like me, I like free trade. Because everything you see here, absolutely everything was made in China. My shirt, my tie, my coat, my Xiaomi watch, and so on. So when you impose tariffs, I pay more. I pay them.
We pay more too. We pay more for many US staff.
But it's a good example. Who do I pay? Before the tariffs, I paid the manufacturer and the worker and the entrepreneurs who made this. Afterwards, I pay them and I pay the US government for something that was made here. Anyway, and it protects inefficient people who want to produce the same good in the United States. We're never going to produce these, but steel and aluminum, anyways. So it's an old story.
That is the truth.
It's the truth. And I also learned, if you get to be old, I learned a Chinese proverb yesterday, which I love. That's an old one. 30 years east of the river, 30 years west of the river. Yeah. And what that means is that these progress in social things is not always straight up. There's return to old ideas that didn't work so well, and we forget that they didn't work so well. My country used to be a high tariff country, and it took a lot of people to say, no, we should be a low tariff country. Now we forgot the reasons. So that's why I think the election, that dimension of the election is not, doesn't make me optimistic. I hope I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm. You visited Hong Kong, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou. All these cities belong to the Great Bay Area. How do you think about the Great Bay Area?
And there's other things. There's Macau. I think it's remarkable. The vibrant cities. the amount of innovation, very innovative companies like DJI, companies I didn't even know that they were in China, let alone. But I bought a DJI drone about 8 years ago in the US. I didn't even know where it came from, but I know it's made in Shenzhen. Phones, all sorts of things. So I'm interested in history, so Guangzhou interests me a lot, and it has a really interesting history. Hong Kong has an interesting history. You know, like America, it was a British colony. It was a British colony for longer. You know, but long before that, it was Chinese. You know, so Shenzhen's an experiment. To an economist, Shenzhen is an amazing thing. But just to see it now.
So finally, would you like to make a prediction of China's economy in 2024?
No.
No?
No. It'll look a lot like 2023. That's what any of my friends who are economists will know what I'm doing. Economies there's a really good statistical model of GDP growth. It's called a geometric random walk with growth. Continue to grow about the same rate. There'll be shocks, you know. It's hard to beat that prediction.
Mm-hmm. Which industries will have more opportunities in China?
I don't know.
No idea?
I have some ideas. They're probably not good ones. So I think one thing, it's kind of the U.S. is helping the Chinese chip industry because of these restrictions. So it's just no question. If we put these subsidies and restrictions on chips anywhere else, the other countries are going to, I think it's really foolish. And U.S. chip manufacturers think it's foolish. What's going to happen is it's going to subsidize, it's going to incentivize, promote R&D and chips in other places. China's one of them. Other places too. China is especially interesting because it has lots of good engineers. And it's got companies entrepreneurs who know how to organize engineers. So 10 years from now, you ask me about chips, all the chips in my thing are to be made in China. They'll probably be pretty good too.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks so much,
Thank
Professor Sargent.
Thank you.
Thank you
good
for
questions.
your time today.
You asked good questions. Thank you.
Thank you.